Hello there. Welcome to Just the Discs. My name is Brian, and we talk about Blu-rays here. And I've got a full-up new disc box and a variety of labels contained therein, and I'm going to discuss what I've picked up and what I've been watching recently. I'll start with this: Dead Men Don't Wear Plaid from Kino, directed by Carl Reiner, starring, of course, Steve Martin as Rigby Reardon, the detective. And this is one of my favorite, if it's I guess a spoof sort of comedy, because it's sort of taking off on the old film noir tropes, and it's just an incredible achievement in that it is, for those that don't know, it combines footage with, I want to say, like a good 10 or more old classic films. So it's a black and white movie. Michael Chapman shot it. Michael Chapman shot things like Taxi Driver, and one of the great cinematographers of all time, honestly, sort of came up with Gordon Willis. So truly one of the greats. And they do this incredible thing where they're matching the tone of the black and whites and the grays, and even the costumes to a degree have to be matched in terms of, making the edits, because these are scenes literally where Steve Martin will be talking to Alan Ladd, in a scene from This Gun for Hire in one scene, and then he's talking to Barbara Stanwyck in Sorry Wrong Number in another scene, and so we're literally cutting back and forth. So, it's going to be tough to match everything. The film grain is sometimes a little heavier in some of the black and white clips, but for the most part, they've done an incredible job of matching the tone, so you can't tell that they're not taking place in the same, time period. So they've done this where they sort of retroactively figured out a weird mystery story to wrap around all these clips, and it's just an incredible feat to just do that alone. But then on top of that, it's incredibly funny and silly. And Rachel Ward stars as sort of not the femme fatale, but like kind of a little bit. But it's one of maybe Steve Martin's best movie, and for me anyway. And I just love this. I just think it's such an incredibly funny movie and such a neat idea that I can't even believe it got made. So it's one of my favorite Carl Reiner films. It's one of my favorite comedies from the 80s. This is the nice slipcase that Kino has for it. And I've flipped the artwork on the Blu-ray. He's got a gun and he's loaded. I like that. And then this one, it previously has been released on Blu-ray, and so I don't think this transfer is new, but it looks great. And this now has a commentary with, as you can see, filmmaker Alan Arkush, one of my favorites, and film historian filmmaker Daniel Kramer. And they are good together. They've done several commentaries with Kino, and I've enjoyed all of them. They play off each other well, and they just kind of talk you through the movie. They talk you through all the clips. They're like, okay, this is The Bribe or whatever. The Bribe is actually a Charles Laughton movie that's used extensively in this, and so that's kind of neat to have them there to talk you through the different clips and to give you little factoids like, Edith Head did costumes on over 400 and something movies and things like that. So there's just a lot of nice information in there, and it's just an enjoyable conversational track that I totally dug. And as well, you get radio spots and TV spots. But like I said, this is just a favorite for me. So if you are into those sort of spoofy comedies, if you're into film noir, I can't see you not digging that. And then, okay, so I talked about this briefly when I got it, Terminal Island. This is the 4K, of course, from Vinegar Syndrome. And I don't think I had gotten a chance to check it out. And in doing so, and in checking out the features, I actually got kind of inspired to do a little mini festival for the director. Her name's Stephanie Rothman. She came up through Roger Corman. I watched her film The Student Nurses, which is one of the earliest films she did. That's on Tubi, or at least it was. I don't think that's on anything but an out-of-print DVD right now. But anyway, so she did a bunch of movies And then she started, in with this company, Dimension Pictures, I think. And all the movies that I watched, with the exception of Student Nurses, is Dimension Picture, as is this. But so anyway, this is a really enjoyable, for what it is, exploitation movie. It is better than your average women in prison film, although it certainly has elements of that. But obviously the idea is that, in this, there's a great interview with Stephanie Rothman on here, which is very cool, about 30 minutes. She goes through her whole history with Roger Corman and through, developing this movie and some ideas they had and some things they wanted to avoid. And so she talks about how she didn't like women in prison movies, and so she didn't want to do that. So they came up with sort of this alternate time, like not an alternate dimension, but kind of thing where basically, it's sort of taking place in Los Angeles, which I think most of her films do. And there is this place called Terminal Island, which is, become a penal colony for murderers, and everybody gets sent there that's murdered, and they are sort of left to fend for themselves. I don't even think, maybe I can't remember now if too much supplies are dropped off for them, so they have to sort of figure out a way to stay alive. And it's a little rough, I'll be honest, in terms of, for women, they are treated like sex slaves in a way. They're also treated like just work mules too. Like there's a point where, two women are pulling a plow and the guys are sort of, bossing them around, and then they are made to have sex with the men, because there's only one attempted rape in the movie. And I guess the other stuff is certainly rape as well, but it's I guess it's supposedly seen as like not that. I don't know. It's hard to explain because it definitely is that. But it's an interesting hierarchy that's developed on the island, and this new woman joins in, and she's right there with the knife to the guy's throat or whatever. And she's just not going to take it. She's not going to take this hierarchical stuff. And so, things start to get a bit more rebellious, a bit more out of control. And, it's, like I said, it's a tough watch, but it's an enjoyable watch. It, of course, contains an early role for Tom Selleck and Roger E. Mosley. So you have two actors who both ended up in Tom Selleck's Magnum PI show. And I don't know about the connection there. I don't know if there was some thing where when Selleck got the movie or the show, if he was like, get Roger E. Mosley to play TC, because Mosley's a great actor, and I just love seeing him in earlier roles. I always loved him on Magnum, and he's just a really solid, performer, and he's very good in this. It's a trickier role, not the most likable, but overall, he does a great job with it. And so do all the ladies involved. And yeah, it's just a solid exploitation film. But yeah, so what really set me off is, so you've got the Why Be a Man When You Can Be a Rothman, the extended interview with Stephanie Rothman, which was good. And then the Rothmanaissance, rediscovering the work of Stephanie Rothman, a brand new critical featurette with film historian Dr. Alicia Cosma and author, journalist, programmer Heidi Honeycutt. The two of them really, kind of pick up some of the same threads as what you're hearing in the Stephanie Rothman interview, and they go through her filmography. And so I was like, oh, I have some of these Blu-rays. So some of these aren't actually new pickups, but in a way that I had not opened them. I'd had them for years, and so I hadn't gotten to them yet. So I'll just talk about these two briefly. They're both Code Red Blu-rays. Unfortunately, I think they're both out of print at this point. Yeah, so this is The Working Girls from, I want to say, 1974. And it's a very good movie. It's maybe her best movie, I think. And it's sort of just an ensemble character piece about three girls living in LA, and they share an apartment, and they sort of are, trying out some different jobs. One of them ends up working in a strip bar, and she sort of takes some notes from Cassandra Peterson, who I think the movie's most known for. Cassandra Peterson, of course, the real Elvira, and there is some nudity in the film featuring her, and I think it might be her only nudity in a film, and so I know that the film was quite sought after at a point for that. But there's a lot more going on here. I thought it was just really well written, and the characters were very interesting and funny. One of the girls meets this rich guy who puts an ad in the paper and just wants a friend to hang out with, but then of course he gets weird, and so there's lots of interesting LA locations. A lot of it takes place in Venice, which is a part of LA that I always enjoy seeing on film, the canals of Venice, California. And so I just really dug this, and I wouldn't have, for whatever reason, watched it had I not been inspired by the Terminal Island special features. But I do recommend tracking this down if you can in some way and watching it. And then I also checked out Stephanie Rothman's film Group Marriage, which is it preceded Working Girls. So I think it goes like Student Nurses, Group Marriage, Working Girls, and then Terminal Island. I want to say that's the order. But anyway, this is also enjoyable and very much like a lower budget exploitation version of Bob and Carol and Ted and Alice, where you have a couple that sort of meets another girl, and they invite her to live with them, and then they find another guy, and then there's like swapping partner stuff happening, but it's all done with a very light touch for the most part, and it's ultimately similarly well written in terms of the characters. There's just a lot of cliched writing that tends to happen in exploitation films, and I find that in this case, Stephanie Rothman is, one of the co-writers on all these films, I believe, and there's just something there to that, something to the dialogue and the characterizations, and you have, a really interesting portrayal for I'm forgetting all the actors involved, but there's just a lot of interesting characters. Like one of the Claudia Jennings, that's who I was trying to think of. She's always great, and unfortunately was gone very young, so didn't do a ton of films. But she plays like a lawyer in this, and probably the only lawyer role that she ever got. And she's a very sharp character and very intelligent, and not just sort of meant to be something pretty to put on screen. There's a lot more to her in this case. And yeah, this one's just another enjoyable Stephanie Rothman film. And again, I'm so glad that the Terminal Island came out to sort of push me in that direction. Okay. Here's one from Scream Factory. This is one of their more recent releases. Chamber of Horrors from 1966. This one's kind of fun. It's almost got a William Castle type gimmick to it, in that you can see on the front. It has 4 points in the film where this fear flasher comes up with a horror horn. So it's like the screen starts flashing red, and it's not quite a horn. It's like the sound happens, and it's right before a very violent part of the movie is going to, come about. And there are 4, I guess, violent parts to the film. And it's about a guy who is, it sort of plays along the lines of a House of Wax type thing, but not exactly, because what you have is a killer, a serial killer type guy, who is being investigated by these 2 gentlemen who run a House of Horrors, wax museum, and they work in conjunction with the authorities to help solve cases, because they're sort of amateur criminologists, although one of them I think has a degree and has written several books, and so they're sort of helping the police solve the story behind this guy who's murdering people. And it's a fun watch. Like, I enjoyed it, and the gimmick worked for me. I thought it was enjoyable. This one has a new audio commentary with film historian Steve Haberman, which it's funny because, sometimes they put the features in bonus and sometimes they put them in audio setup. And so I didn't catch that was because it didn't show up in the bonus features. So I missed it. So I didn't get to check that out yet, but I like Steve Haberman, always does a good job. And I'd love to hear him talk about the gimmick of this and the reception of it. But this transfer looks very nice. I've only ever seen this 4x3. I think I saw it on back when Warner Archive Instant was a thing, when they had a Warner Archive Instant channel you could watch. I think this was one of the films on there, but at that point it hadn't been remastered, and now it is, and it looks very nice. Yeah, so I don't know. This one, prepare yourself for a chilling tale of terror and unspeakable vengeance inside the Chamber of Horrors. The condemned maniac Jason Cravat escapes from the authorities at a bloody cost by chopping off his manacled hand. Oh yeah, that's one of the moments in the film where you get the flashing and the horn and stuff. This guy cuts his own hand off in order to not be drowned, and then he gets a replacement, as you can see there, stump thing that he can put different attachments into, which is a kind of a cool gimmick that comes out later in the film. And he's free to kill once more, outfits his gruesome stump with tools designed to chop, rip, and skewer a new batch of victims as he embarks on a bloody spree of death. This one, like I said, I'd heard of it, I'd seen it, but I didn't really remember it, and I'm glad I picked it up. I like it. Directed by Hy Averback. Okay. Next up, we have one from Paramount. A very singular and unique film called Bugsy Malone from well, that's a good question. Well, here's the flip out poster. This is from 1976, I think. And it's part of their Paramount Presents line where they give you the nice slipcase. And this is the first U.S. release of this film. There have been overseas releases, and I did actually have a UK release. Now, I can't tell if there's a new transfer done here or not, but it looks nice. Looks very nice, and this is cheaper than I think the UK import would have been. Here's the UK import I have. The one thing I will say before I go into the features on this one is that this import that I got does have a commentary track with director Alan Parker, who of course did Birdie, and he's really a special director that I like very much, and so I loved hearing his commentary track, and I wish it was included here, but it's not. Anyway, this is a really unique film. It's a musical. The music is written by the great Paul Williams. It stars a young Jodie Foster and Scott Baio, among others. And it's like a gangster picture. It's like a, Warner Brothers, James Cagney era gangster picture, but done as a musical. And instead of guns, the kids fire cream pies at each other. They have these guns that they look like grenade launchers, but basically they shoot wads of cream pie, and people are effectively killed by those. And so, yeah, it's sort of a standard gangster story, but it's got some really nice musical numbers because Paul Williams is involved, and Paul Williams is, of course, also interviewed on the Blu-ray, and we get to hear his thoughts on the movie. He definitely thinks fondly of this film, and his music is great, of course. And then you get also an interview with the executive producer, David Putnam. And a little bit of what comes out is how Alan Parker, who also did Midnight Express, and I'm blanking on all his stuff. He did tons of movies that are great. And he used to tell his kids this story of this character that he had come up with called Bugsy Malone, and that was sort of the beginnings of how this actually came to be a story that he wanted to tell, But it's a very unique movie, a cult item, and one that I'm very glad that Paramount put out as part of this, line. So definitely worth picking up. And then another kind of weird kids movie, we've got Puff and Stuff. This is from 1970. This, of course, is the film version of the same characters from the Sid and Marty Krofft TV show, very popular in the late 60s and early 70s. And yeah, this is a very trippy movie. The whole concept of HR Puffin stuff is very strange. And in the movie, they actually sort of set up the kid who, enters this fantasy world with this magic flute that talks to him, and the flute, does magical stuff, and there's a witch named Witchy Poo that wants the flute, and Puffin Stuff is that guy there, trying to help the kid. And so they kind of set up the kid as this lonely, sad kid before he enters the fantasy world, and then it just gets trippy and strange, and it's bizarre. It has a special appearance by Mama Cass and Martha Ray, and it's trippy stuff. It's very interesting to watch. I still kind of marvel at the idea that this was a popular children's television show, which feels like it was aimed at chronic drug users in some way, or trying to appeal to that audience. And I really do feel like there was some subsect of children's television production that was aimed at people who were, I don't know, effectively stoners around this time, because it just feels like they must be shooting for something psychedelic and strange. And I just don't, it almost feels like drugs must have been used to come up with some of these ideas. And so that may be part of it too. I don't know. But yeah, this looks very nice. This is produced by Universal Pictures, which I thought was really intriguing, because Sid and Marty Krofft did and they did a ton of shows. They did them very cheaply, shot them, I think, on video. I can't remember if they're all that way, but at least some of them were. But they did a whole series of them, that were all interesting and silly and fun. This being one of the most popular of their output. But this movie is very much in line with the show. You can see all the crazy, trippy characters. There's Mama Cass right there, in a bowl of fruit. And so it's it's cool to get this on Blu-ray. Unfortunately, it doesn't have any features or any interviews of any kind. This is from Code Red, but the transfer does look good, and this is the first time, I believe, for this on Blu-ray, so that's very cool. But yeah, it was nice to check this out. I was showing this to my wife, who remembered it fondly from her childhood. She used to watch the show when she was a kid, and I don't think she ever got to see the movie. So I think there'll be some folks like that who remember the show and never got to see the film itself, and I think it'll be fun and nostalgic revisit for some. So anyway, that's Puffin Stuff. Then we have a couple from Umbrella Entertainment. This is one I haven't seen in 25 plus years. It's called Malcolm. It's from 1985, I believe. This is an all-region disc from Umbrella, but it is an Australian film, and it's about a guy named Malcolm who is on the spectrum somewhere, seems to be autistic, lives in his mother's house. His mother's passed away a year prior, and he's been working at the the sort of trolley station, and he has an incredible aptitude for mechanical devices, and so he has, at the beginning of the film, created this little trolley car on his own that will run on the trolley tracks that he built from like spare parts that he found around the station. And he takes it out for a spin, and it's just the most wonderful opening scene. The song Music from a Found Harmonium by Penguin Cafe Orchestra is playing, and I would recommend going and looking up that song. It's a beautiful song. You'll recognize it. I think may have been used in like the trailer for She's Having a Baby or something. It's just this great piece of music. And of course, once people see him riding around on this trolley car, word gets back to his boss, and he is fired, sadly. And then there's a woman that lives down the street that runs like a general store, and she has to tell him, like, look, you can't buy any more groceries because you haven't paid for the last groceries. You need to find a way to earn some money. I think you should take in a boarder in your house, have a roommate. And so he does that. He invites this guy. This dude answers the ad. His name's Frank. He ends up being sort of an ex-convict, and he brings his girlfriend along, Judith. and they sort of hit it off, despite, Malcolm's weirdness, and he has all kinds of like trains and electronic devices around his house. Like his mailbox is actually a train that when he hits a button, it comes out from the mailbox holder and just takes a track back to the house so he can get the mail and then put it back. And he has all kinds of stuff like that. And he even builds this car. That's like one of the sort of set pieces of the movies. He builds this car that can split in half and become basically like two-man scooters. So it's a really sweet film, ultimately. It reminds me a lot of like a Bill Forsyth movie or something, like, Breaking In. Very low stakes for the most part, low-key character-based stuff, and, a sweet movie. And I really was happy to revisit it. It's really nice that this Sunburnt Screens line that Umbrella is doing is some really interesting movies that I totally enjoy. And this is definitely one of those Australian cult films that has been nearly forgotten, I think, at this point. Even when I found it on VHS years ago, I was like, I think I found it in a cult section. So I'm like, okay, people know about this movie. I'd never heard of it, but I haven't heard a lot of people talk about it since then. And this is the first Blu-ray that I'm aware of. But so this is a nice Blu-ray. They've done a wonderful job. A Quieter Time, an interview featurette with David Parker, who's one of the producers, an audio commentary with the director Nadia Tass and David Parker, Malcolm at the AFI Awards, Where Was It Filmed featurette, NFSA Malcolm Carr featurette, so a little something on the special car in the movie, Popcorn Taxi Q&A with Nadia Tass and David Parker, interview with Colin Friels, SBS Movie Show interview with Lindy Davies, David Parker and Nadia Tass, archival NFSA interview, more Malcolm gizmos. I mean, it's really a well done and packed special edition. So I do recommend this one quite a bit if you're into sort of sweeter cult movies. I really was excited to get... This is actually one of my favorite Umbrella releases that I've gotten, and I totally dug the rewatch. Also with that, I got Nightmares from, I want to say, 1980. It's a little bit of a slasher movie. There is sort of a theatrical element to it. The back says, adding nonstop bloodshed to his successful cinematic recipe of softcore sex and ample naked flesh, exploitation auteur John D. Lamond, who directed the film Felicity, for those that know that one, takes on the stalk and slash genre with a vengeance in this infamous homegrown Halloween clone. I see that a little bit, although it makes more sense now. Haunted by the childhood memory of her mother being dragged through a shattered car window, aspiring actress Jenny Newman, who I guess was in Hell Night, finds herself trapped at the center of a brutal killing spree as one by one her fellow thespians are butchered by a psychopath with a sliver of glass. So the opening of the movie has this little girl and her mother's, I guess, boyfriend in a car, and the daughter, like the man is trying to, kiss the woman, the mom, and do more than that, and the daughter doesn't like it, so she tries to stop them, and they end up sort of yelling at her in the back seat, and then they get in an accident, and they both fly through the front windshield, and the daughter, I think, tries to grab her mom and pulls her backwards, and in doing so scrapes her mother's neck over the broken glass of the windshield, ultimately causing her death, which unfortunately somebody tells her later, you killed your mother, this is your doing. And she's just a little kid, so she's obviously hugely traumatized by both the death and the idea that she could have caused it. And then she takes up acting, but she's definitely strange. Like she meets this other actor and he's very much sort of hitting on her, and she's not into it, understandably, but then she is into it in other parts, and so she's very hot, cold, just very strange feeling actor. And so she gets a part in this play. Here's the front and back, aka stage fright. And yeah, it's basically the actors in the play start getting killed off, and it's sort of a slasher type thing. Definitely more known, I think, if you're a fan of Australian films. This is one I had not seen. It says proudly high on body count, including a notoriously graphic full frontal thrill kill scene, and thankfully low on subtext. Nightmare is a textbook 80s slash trash at its bloody best. And it has a decent amount of features on this one as well. You have an audio commentary with director John D. Lamond and filmmaker Mark Hartley. Not Quite Hollywood extended interviews with director John D. Lamond, actress Nina Landis, and cinematographer Gary Wapshot. Deleted scenes, confessions of an R-rated filmmaker John Lamond. And notably, this is written by and produced by Colin Eggleston, who also did some cool Australian films like Long Weekend, which is, I certainly prefer that to this film, but he's a very interesting filmmaker, and it's neat that he's involved. And I think maybe some of the reason this is somewhat interesting is because he is involved. But yeah, this is another one that's all region. So you can order this from, I think Amazon might even have it. And you can play it on any player, not to worry that it's Australian, but 2 interesting releases from Umbrella. And then last but not least, I'm just going to throw this in here. Blind Spotting. Now this, I remember when it came out in, not too long ago. I want to say just a few years back now, 2018. It was hugely critically lauded, and I had been meaning to check it out. And I found this at a Dollar Tree for $1. And this is, again, I haven't seen it, but I'm aware of the critical praise that it got. And in terms of films with critical praise, I think it's probably the most critically praised film I've ever gotten for $1 at Dollar Tree. And it is, on the back it says, a timely and wildly entertaining story about a recently paroled man, David Diggs, who begins to reevaluate his relationship with his volatile best friend, Rafael Casal, and it takes place in Oakland. So it's kind of like my hometown Oakland kind of movie. And this one has a director's commentary, a writer and actress commentary, making Blind Spotting featurette, director's diary. It's actually got a lot of features, plus deleted scenes. Again, I can't believe I got this for $1. But I'm planning to check it out. I've only heard great things about it. I've heard several people talk about it being one of their favorite films of 2018 or the year it came out. And so I really kind of can't wait to dig into this. But I was more than excited to get my hands on it for $1. So I just had to throw it. I was going to do a Dollar Tree haul video, but this is the only, I didn't really pick up anything else. There wasn't anything else that I thought really was worth grabbing, but this was like definitely worth grabbing. So I just wanted to include it here. I don't know if you can still find copies of this at Dollar Trees, but maybe have a look around. This is, this will be probably a month since I picked it up when this video goes live. But you never know. They tend to sometimes still get movies in, and it varies from location to location in terms of what movies people can find there and whatnot. So thought it might be worth mentioning. Anyway, that is it for this collection update. Hopefully there's some stuff in here for you to check out and enjoy. And as always, I thank you for watching, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.